Hi, welcome to another map analysis video. This time we're looking at Mustang, which is by Squad and Grapen. Grapen. However you say that guy's name. So this is a map for the MapCore Exotic Places contest. Once again. Also, once again, has some skybox issues. I will demonstrate as many as I have found and also remember. And I also have to turn bot chatter off, because I forgot to do that. I'll add that to my config next time, but I think it gets reset or something. So yeah, we'll just do the normal thing that we always do, where I run through T-spawn to A, then to CT, and then CT to B, and then to T, and then mid, I guess. So this is indeed T-spawn. It's very colorful. The map in general actually has some nice, like a variety of different colors that it uses, and as well as different textures. These StarCraft 2-esque rocks are kind of ugly looking, but it's mostly just like where they blend into the ground and the fact that they seem so disparate and out of place compared to the texture that was used for the ground. I'm not really sure what can be done to resolve that, but as far as I understand, most of the stuff is custom, so hopefully we can see an update that tweaks at least the borders to make them seem a little bit similar. Like, I actually don't mind the way that the rocks seem to blend into the buildings, even mostly because you can't really see that as much, because it is pretty much just as bad as them blending into the dirt there, but at least when it's blending into stairs or whatever, because the color scheme is similar, I think it looks a little bit more natural. Whereas, not really sure what the hell's going on here. And yeah, that's that. We got some grass, we got some snow, we got some dirt, we got some rocks. So there you go. Let's head over to the A bomb site. So, this little temple thing I imagine will mostly be used as like lurk spot maybe. Once in a blue moon you might leave like some guy with a rifle over here baiting his entire team, I guess. But otherwise it'll mostly be used for smoke lineups. I haven't found any yet in this particular area. I was experimenting with something that would smoke off some shit over in the A bomb site, but this one was particularly difficult to actually find because of all the weird skybox stuff. So for example, these trees up here will actually and like just to an area above these rocks here, which as you can see, we're not technically in the gameplay area yet, which is why things disappear, I assume. Yeah, this needs to be adjusted, and I would say probably just have nades pass completely through the trees. Obviously not necessarily pass through this pillar, but like the electrical pole or whatever. But it would be nice to pass through the trees, or at the very least be able to pass, you know, between the leaves or something and leave the tree stalks the way that they are. Something like that would be helpful, just so that we can actually get some utility out of this, because otherwise we really have to like jump throw and like you either smoke, like I found a smoke for this particular position, but that's mostly like hampering you. I found a smoke for over here at some point that I completely forgot. I'm sure there's one that you could get for over here, but if you're trying to do something that's deeper or even more shallow, like smoking this off or something, it's actually very, very difficult to do from over here, from this little temple area. And of course, this is a side path that goes through the rocks. Now, before I move on to the A bomb site, you should know that it is possible to self-boost your way up and then float forever, apparently. I did this before, so I'm sure it's possible. Just got to build it up enough speed, perhaps. There you go. And suddenly you're here. Suddenly you're on top of here. So this could be a really cheeky angle, especially if you're new to the map, right? And you're taking this information in stride and somebody peeks out from there trying to be super aggro, although odds are like you're probably not going to peek out from that side just based on the positioning. But the idea is like you could easily hold this. You could also just use this to hold anybody pushing middle and then like drop back down, assuming like the A approach is smoked or something. There's plenty of utility for this. Unfortunately, and perhaps fortunately as well, you can't then use it to jump over there. This whole area is completely impassable. My critique on this is mostly the fact that, like, I actually think this is really cool. I think more stuff like this should exist in the game, where you can use elevation to your advantage and cliffs and stuff like that actually mean something as opposed to just being barriers. I find that if there's actually some gameplay area that this creates, rather than being negative space purely, I think it can create some really interesting engagements. I mean, think of like the legendary Hiko clutch on Cache A site, where he like jumps up for his last kill. And he's over what is now like the tank, but back before was just that red crate, I think, the shipping container. So, you know, he jumps over that. I think that really is like a selling point. Like that's all you need to know to really see like that adds more depth. And obviously this isn't on a bomb site, but it still, I think, can add some more niche plays that can be exploited by players who understand it. And I think that self-boost is fine. I don't think it should be removed. In fact, maybe there should be another spot that you can be self-boosted onto that area just so that you can have a little bit more like back and forth. Like if a T's over here and they hear somebody over there, like as the CT running out, you might have to be concerned about that. But maybe it's also more balanced as a CT if you're trying to do an aggressive push and you already have to look up here because they could have self-boosted on this side. You don't want to have to continuously look up there necessarily. So I don't know. It's obviously a balance. But just judging by the fact that it's actually black on the radar, I assume that this is not something that the developers realized. Maybe it is. Maybe I'm mistaken on that. Because I figure if they wanted it to be a playable area deliberately, they probably... I mean, they clearly like pathed it out and stuff. You know, they created some clipping for you to walk around. So I assume actually it is maybe that's more of an argument for it to be intentional. But I also would have assumed that they would have actually blocked out some terrain there on the minimap. I don't remember if you can get up here. I think you can. I see no reason why you wouldn't be able to. And maybe you could almost certainly run boost onto there if you really felt like it for whatever reason. So some interesting parkour you can do. And yeah, I'm generally a fan of that. I really like I said, just allowing the elevation of the game, the 3D, third dimension, to really take hold and apply some gameplay value. Because most levels don't really have that level of verticality. Like obviously Nuke does, Vertigo does. But even in that small way, by comparison to those maps, you don't really see that. It's either an extreme or it's not there at all, generally speaking. So I'm always, you know, I like that when I see it. I don't know what the fuck is going on over there with these candles. Something seems wrong about that lighting. I'm not sure what. Maybe the fact that it's not casting a shadow, probably. But anyway, here we are. I see what looks to be a bowling ball. Kind of reminded me of that Reddit icon, unfortunately. That's how corrupted my mind is now. But obviously, this is like a very clear op duel in the making, this angle here. You can peek down to the CT approach over there. Also, of course, there's a couple of different exits. Like there's a door, yeah, right over here that you can't quite see from this angle. You'd have to really go wide and expose yourself to see that, or you'd have to do this. But you could also check that, and of course be opted by that. So if you want to avoid that, you have to be over here and then swing. But of course, you know, there's a variety of angles here just at play. Like that building, which I believe is accessible from CT side. Yeah, you could go all the way over here. Excuse me. So yeah, you can go all the way over there, and that by itself can be a nice little adjustment that CTs can make. CT snipers. I'm going to sneeze again. CT sneezers. No, maybe I'm not going to sneeze again. Okay, cool. I've conquered my sneeze. But yeah, that's going to be like you know, there's certain areas like Mirage Window, for example, that I almost think are noob magnets. Like obviously the pros also play around Window and they use it as a sniper's nest. But sneeze. Oh, Jesus. Sneezes, Christ. So yeah, where was I? Noob magnets. I feel like this area is going to be a noob magnet. Because there's so many people who are like, I've seen the pros do this. And then they're just going to get destroyed. And it's mostly going to be me, so whatever. This is another one, though, as you can see. This is actually one of my favorite spots in the whole game. Well, my favorite beginnings of an interesting decision-making, I should say. Because you can jump onto this barrel, self-boost, and then do this little parkour trick where you run across over here. So if you've taken sight control, right? And it's obviously possible to jump on this nightmare of an angle to clear, which I actually say without any... I don't mind it. I actually think it's fine. But that is a nightmare of an angle. You can obviously do this. And you're on here. So if you have sight control, you planted the bomb in a 1vx or something, you can pull off some epic Zipnix plays. See, I'm changing it so it's not only French players I'm referencing. I referenced Hiko and Zipnix, so or Zipex, I guess, because that 9 is an E, because Danes are weird. Anyway, you got that. You can do that parkour thing. That's more Z that I was talking about earlier. I don't think you can get up here. Apparently, you can just self-boost your way up here the noob way, the virgin way, but my way is the Chad way, obviously, so don't be a virgin. I'm trying to think. I assume you can't get up to here, because that would be ridiculous, but it would be pretty funny. It seems like there's bleach over there. In fact, that might actually be Clorox. Ah, it's chlorine. Wow, that's epic. So outside of that Easter egg, I think that's that. Can you self-boost up to here? Doesn't look like it. Yeah, you get kicked off or frozen. All right, so we're kind of figuring out like the levels of Z. Also, an interesting note that I wish more maps try, but I understand why they don't. You can indeed plant on these those boxes there. Of course, you can't plant on these ones. So it's really just these limited ones right here. So these lower ones, which I think is neat. More Z on the bomb sites as well, as far as like plantable bomb area or bomb plantable area. English is welcome, in my opinion. So yeah, lots of obviously lots of angles. You really have to learn this bomb site inside and out in terms of clearing angles on the approach, particularly from this particular bottleneck. But as I'll show you in mid, there are more than one way. There's more than one way to legitimately take this site. And just based on the interconnectivity of the map overall, I think there's going to be a lot of really interesting things that can happen in this map that will happen to a reasonable degree of consistency in general. So it's more than just like, yes, there's the weird niche potential of something that is interesting and off the wall and exciting in the moment, and actually affords some tactical depth to the player or to the team that's doing it, like belies some sort of greater understanding of the map and the tactics, and expresses their level of skill in that sense. There's stuff like that for most maps, if we're being honest, just because of how Counter-Strike is as a game and because of how movement works and all this other stuff. But it takes a higher level map, I think, to deliver upon different kinds of things, like what we're talking about in this particular case, where not only are there examples of those things that could happen, like possibilities, but it's like stuff that will happen. It's the difference between something that you could do and something that you both could and would do, if that makes any sense. So there's actually motivation for you to do that, rather than, like, other than just trying to be flashy or whatever. There's reasons for you to take different pathways in this maps that I'll try to illustrate as time goes on. So before I go up to CT, I should show you the interior of this building. I'll show that building later. That building, actually, I have some criticism to levy at it. So by saying it now, I'm setting some expectations for you. For one, this building is very empty, much like the other building that I'll show you eventually. You can adjust your Z by running up here, which is, I suppose, an interesting off angle in theory for somebody who's pushing this, but obviously doesn't really afford you a whole lot of value if you're holding it because of its placement. Like maybe if it was over here or something, that you could like run up and then suddenly be upper a little bit, and okay, now I can take this peak, but odds are you're not going to be able to make much use of it in its current spot. So maybe you could move that. In general, I think breaking up the monotony of this texture would definitely help, not just with readability in terms of like me being lazy, like my eyes get lazy and I start to just assume that everything is the same, and it's actually kind of dizzying in some ways. So definitely doing something with this from more interesting visually would be nice, but adding maybe like moving this over here, like I was mentioning, maybe adding some more cover or something, like maybe some shit that's clustered up in this corner that could be extending outward a little bit, that it could be like a nook and cranny, or it could just be something where you can like hug up against it and hold this angle, or like stand in front of it as an off angle or something. Like something more interesting in here for sure would be nice. As of right now, it feels like a very like there's a utility to using this pathway to get to its destination, whatever two destinations that it connects. Like as a connector, it works, but as a piece of the map by itself, it doesn't add much value other than like a pathway between two other points of interest, this being CT spawn and A site. So I can definitely see people using it right now, but I don't really think that it would lead to any exciting engagements within that small environment. And that is my critique of that. And pretty much the same kind of thing is what I can levy at the other room, but I'll show that later on. So this is sort of like an approach. I guess this would be like CT lower or something. This is not actually CT spawn. CT spawn is over here where my buddy Ivo is hanging. What's up, dude? Is Ivo the same guy, same name for the same guy that people are always, that they memified or something? CSGO's Twitter pic was that. For people who don't follow this sort of thing, this is going to be really confusing. Pretty sure that Ivo was that guy's name, but it might have been like Ivan or something else. There's a huge nest of chickens, which I enjoy massacring every time I play this map. So that's points for me, and now you get to watch this. So upvote this video, please. And that's CT spawn. So we'll go to B in a second, but I should just bring honorable mention to this little side staircase, which, well, I don't know if it makes sense to extend the last step here, but that may just trigger my OCD or something. Obviously, you can do some weird, wacky-ass shit with this. Maybe you should be able to self-boost your way into this like crawl space. I'm not sure if that makes any sense, but I don't think it's possible. Oh, you can. Check that out. So I think the only reason you can is because... Oh, you can do that too. Maybe I'm just an idiot. That could also be the reason. Also, if you could have destructible lights, that might make some... add another layer of interactivity here. That's just me spitballing. Probably, obviously not necessary for this map. But yeah, this is like a side path into mid that favors an A site anchor, basically. Although obviously it's mostly just like a rotation if you're already on an A site and you want to rotate safely to mid, or you think you whatever you want to take this path to go all the way to B, you can do this. And I don't actually know, you notably can't like get yourself back up here. I'm pretty sure, even if you oh, you can self boost like that, I suppose, but you're really exposed if you stand on this, which is an interesting bit of tactical information there. I think is like in order to properly use this, you have to not have shit movement. So you have to, like, you can't, my excuse will be that I'm deliberately trying to fail so that I can see exactly how fast you have to go. But at this point, I've failed twice in a row without actually meaning to. So, yeah, it looks like it's trickier than it looks, apparently. Although, obviously, if you're a competent player, not so much. So you have to really, like, walk laterally and build up enough momentum. And you definitely can't be holding any other weapon unless you like hit a B-hop or something. So yeah, that's interesting to me. Like, not only do you, is there an element of movement skill associated with it, but you also are super exposed to the guy that's going to be sitting, that could be trying to op you or something, because you have to stand at the very back in order to build up enough momentum. At least I do. So I would be getting annihilated if somebody was like over there in that area. One more for the road, and we will be heading back to CT. So, some practice required for that one for me because I'm bad. Here's oh, cool. You can actually hide behind this. Neat. Didn't I criticize Victoria or something like that for having something over here that would in CT spawn or T spawn? I think it was. Yeah, but you can actually do that in here. So, could learn a thing or two from Mustang. You fuck. Anyway. Can't boost on top of that. So this is CT spawn. Like I said, you murder the chickens every round, please. That's the only way that I'll be pleased. And there's a quick rotate to B. If you want to take this area, kind of have to time a jump. In fact, I actually only think you have to jump in... I think you only have to make the jump once. In this case, I think you just... No, never mind. I thought there was going to be some clipping that just automatically took me through there. But then I remembered that you actually have to be crouched in order to hit that. So that's a little bit more of movement skill, right? Which I like. In order to make that seamless, or relatively seamless, you have to be somewhat good. And at least know what you're doing. Otherwise, you're just going to be super slow. And yeah, in general, there's a lot of jumps that you can make in this map to different positions, which I think is going to lead to some really exciting post-plant play. And obviously will help speed up rotations from CTs who are adept at that sort of thing. So I assume you can't jump on that. It looked like I could almost. But then I got kicked off maybe. Yeah, it doesn't look like it. I think it was just me uncrouching in the middle of the air. And obviously you can't stand on that or that. Okay, so. Most of these seem to be two-way. Sometimes it's like easier to get from one side to the other. But it seems like all of these are two-way in this particular case. Didn't have to crouch for that one. So yeah, this is like, I guess you could have called this heaven or fucking bed. I don't know, bunk. Call it bunk. That's a good name. Good call out. I want to hear two bunk. That's what I want to hear in my CSGO games. Oh yeah, somebody was asking me about this earlier. I don't actually know how the map core thing works, so maybe somebody who's more familiar with this in past contests can let me know. I'm not sure if any other map core winner has ever been added to CSGO on an official basis. Would be really interesting if Valve actually paid attention to community contests, especially when they have as much prize money as this particular one did. I think it was like 15G or something all told. So that's a pretty penny. Whatever it is, even if it's only 1,500, it's still a pretty penny. So now, obviously, like they put way more work in terms of man hours into it than whatever first place actually is. So who knows what's actually going to happen in that particular case. But yeah, I actually have a very strong feeling that Valve should take note of the top 3 or whatever, even the top 10, and consider them for actual application. I guess one of the things that I wonder how that process goes, because obviously they're notoriously closed-lipped about everything that they do. I wonder if there's anybody who's actually had their map, like they've been approached to have their map accepted. I wonder if there's like some sort of stipulation that your map will only be accepted if you can actually commit to updating it based on feedback. Because like obviously FMPone updates cache, and he updated Sub-Zero when it was added to the queue, and all this other stuff. I'm sure he updated Crown and Santorini and Season, but I wasn't around for those days. So I have a feeling that there's a strong amount of potential where like you actually have to be around to update your map. And I'm not sure how many of the map core mappers are able to actually do that, or at least promise to do that, which obviously are two different things. I'm pretty sure most of them would be, but it's an interesting wrinkle. Is like, I wonder if that affects them in any way. Like, do they actually look at the track record of a mapper and say like, all right, you've supported your maps for X amount of months to years after you finished them or after you first released them. And so there you go. Could be interesting. Anyway, rant over, or tirade, side rant over. We're on B site. There's tons of places to play in B site. As you can see, there's like this little back area here, which says private lot. And some electrical boxes and stuff. So there's plenty of places to play. And this is one of those things where pretty much no matter where the T's plant the bomb, because they can plant it over here, right? And I didn't really go over this on the A side. I'll do that later on. You can plant it over here and then have a sight on it from over here, like control it from it over here. Closer towards like the mid rotation and the B long or whatever. You can just be set up over here. You can be on the bike. You can be over like holding this or something. Waiting for them to run out bunk, stuff like that. It's just super interesting in terms of what strategies you can do in post plant, and also it makes scouting in that sense really important. Like you need to know where the bomb is as CT, so you know what angles to even check. And of course, there's like super mega mind games you can play if you're Kerrigan or some other galaxy brain like Glaive, I guess, where you would just be running around and like, yeah, we planted out here, but we're gonna send some dude all the way back here just to hold like some really gimmick angle. And even though it's not planted for him per se, he can still like surprise them, right? Like if he just sits right here, you know, and then he's like waiting to take a duel from this guy, that could be super interesting. I don't know. There's so many different wrinkles in this particular bomb site alone that make me really excited. As primarily a viewer, as opposed to a player, I'd be super interested in seeing pro play. Like after they've actually figured the map out, seeing pro play on this map would be, I think, pretty interesting. So stuff like that, I obviously, that's another lens that I try to ground my analysis with. And try to view maps through, is the idea of like, what would pros do with this? Because I'm mostly interested in watching Counter-Strike. I play some CS from time to time, but really what I like to do is I like to watch the pros, the people who are literally paid to do the best that they can do, and paid good money as well, I might add. I like to watch them play the game. And so my biggest, like, I guess, consideration is always like, what would pros do? Even though usually, generally speaking, the vast majority of maps that I'm going to look at aren't really going to involve anything to do with pro players. Like most of the time, pros are not actually going to play these maps. Most of the time, they're not going to be added to the map pool. You know, just being realistic, not necessarily talking about quality or whatever. But I think it's super interesting to imagine that sort of stuff. And so I'm really excited about like all the different angles you can take. Like you can sit under here. Like it might be too many. Again, like I say this all the time, you know, you really need some testing to figure that out. And again, testing by pros who can abuse that sort of thing. And even then, like if you, so what, you decide, okay, yeah, there's probably too many angles for CTs to have good retakes or for Ts to clear out bomb sites. But really what you have to do is like, do I want a T or CT sided map or a dead even map? You know, Thorin actually has a really good video on this that he made a long time ago. That was like the beauty of map balance or something. Echoes a lot of the points that I made a few videos ago. I think it might have been for Swamp, where I was talking about how like maps should not necessarily be balanced to have 8-7 halves all the time. I think it's great if like there's a CT sided or slightly CT sided or slightly T sided map now and then, and even sometimes mega ones are fine too. So I think it'd be super interesting to see something like this. And not necessarily like coming away with it thinking that maybe CTs or Ts have an easier time necessarily. It is kind of annoying that you can't really smoke anything off of it because of the skybox issues. Like you can't really do like mid stuff over here for as you can see, for obvious reasons. You can't like be a T and chuck nades at mid. You have to be like all the way towards B basically. And this is like super, at this point you're super exposed to anybody who's like playing on CT side and is remotely close to this area. And so obviously they could also just be holding this like little alleyway and annihilate you as you're throwing nades or something. So there's any number of things that can happen, but assuming those skybox things are bugs as opposed to anything else, like you can't even really, like over this building as well, there's a ton of clipping that needs to be addressed. And looks like over here as well, although that's mostly just going to be people trying to throw smokes or something from CT spawn, but that should still be possible, even if it wouldn't necessarily be super helpful at the start of a round. If somebody's rotating and they know a lineup, they can do like, hey, all right, I'm smoking bunk. I don't know why you would smoke bunk, but you're smoking bunk. You know, you should be able to do something like that, but instead it bounces off over here. So as you can see, it's not my favorite thing. I always complain about skybox clipping and stuff. obviously it's probably the last thing or one of the last things on developers' minds. But when they get to the point where they're polishing their product off, I shouldn't at least have to wonder, I think, if something is deliberate. Like, generally speaking, if they want to prohibit nades over certain areas, they're going to make the skybox super consistent. And instead, it's like random bits here and there. And it looks like it's just like left over from some earlier gray box or something. Some earlier build of the game. Or the map, I should say. So anyway, I think we're done talking about B-site proper. This is obviously like the approach to it from T's perspective. There's so many angles to check as a T coming into here. But obviously, the further up you are, the more danger you are placing the rest of your players on. Like, you could have like a B anchor and then one guy who plays aggro B, but if your B anchor isn't backing you up and you die, obviously that's pretty bad. If your B anchor is backing you up and you both die, also pretty bad. So, yeah, you don't want to be doing that necessarily, but obviously there's plenty of room for teams to make changes to their playstyle where they can rush out here and check this area. I'm pretty sure with this angle you are able to peek out over here. Yeah, so you can be super far out, and you can this is like another op duel in a sense, where this is going to be like two people who are going to be trying to do that. And obviously you can do like wrinkles like this, but you're exposed from over here necessarily, so you got to watch out for that. I think in general it's a well-balanced approach, just because CTs can use certain things as aggression, and if you're falling back as a T as well, you can obviously use this to make a quick escape, which I've done more than a few times already on this map. And I think in general, you're going to start to see a pretty large number of, like, I don't know, I think that once the skybox issues are fixed, you could easily see a large number of, like, fakes or, like, pushes for map control, where you do something like this, where you do, like, I don't even know where this is going to land. It's going to be super embarrassing, probably. Well, you know, I did tell you, but that's just because you can't preview jump throws yet. Come on, CSGO. Come on, Valve. Please fix. But there's plenty of different things that you could do to push for map information, and then obviously there's like tons of pathways like this alleyway, which is pretty long and pretty daunting if you don't have mid control. But if you got like two guys mid, one guy B, two guys A or something like that, or even like one guy towards A, two guys towards mid, and two guys towards B, those B guys can run into mid pretty easily from that alleyway entrance. So definitely, like, assuming you have mid control, like, mid is actually super important. And mid is almost divided into two different layers, because you've got on the right over here, you've got like the upper mid, and then on the left, you got the lower mid, and lower is towards A and upper is towards B. And so depending on where you are on the map and depending on what control you actually have, there's like a bunch of different segments, because this gets more modular based on this. So let me back up here before I get too far ahead of myself, and I'll walk you through the T approach to B one more time. So obviously you would be going down by this, I guess this cart over here, and you'd be passing by the mid entrance and heading towards the same area we were just in earlier, which links back towards alley. If you didn't want to do that and you're just trying to go to mid, obviously you'd come out from T spawn, you'd run over here, and you'd be faced with two options immediately. You could either go towards upper mid, right, which is B side, and take angles there, take fights there, or you could go towards lower mid by going up here, and you drop down into this little cubby, which I suspect you're actually quite hidden if you decide to do that. Oh, maybe not. I forget what my bind is for mimicking anyway, but it's not too important in this particular case. You definitely could have CTs playing something like this, waiting for people to drop, but even then, like, you'll know that somebody's there dropped, but in fact, I imagine there's probably going to be like a T smoke specifically designed for over here, or even maybe for over here, that will get you, will allow people to drop down here and go towards A, or drop down here and flank, you know, surprise angle the guy over here who might be holding there, depending on where the smoke lands, obviously. This area is not possible to run in, but it is going to be an obvious area where snipers are going to set up. On the CT side, you can look through it from this angle. You have a little bit of elevation. T side, obviously, you don't have that luxury, so you're going to be aiming upwards. But that being said, you're obviously also going to be attempting to take map control through this channel over here. And I guess you can just lob nades over here. I don't believe you can boost up here. Yeah, okay, just making sure. And then you're also faced with two more options if you do decide to go down towards the A side of the map. You can kill chickens, obviously. That's the option you're always going to take. But other than that, you can either keep towards the lower side, which allows you to head out towards, like, more towards the CT side of things, and then you can do another rotation into the A bomb site. This is the building that I said I would levy criticism at. Obviously, it looks a little bit less barren than the other area, but it's basically the same thing. Like I said, probably could be more stuff in here. Maybe one of these shelves could have fallen down and conveniently laid itself out over there. That would allow somebody to take an angle and then be, raised upward a little bit, so that they could elevate their Z again. Otherwise, maybe that's pretty much the only thing it needs. I don't know. Some water over here, very nice. Would love some of that right now. Chickens. So, yeah, you can obviously go there. And then otherwise you can go up these stairs, which takes you out towards the upper area you may have noticed when I was talking about my approach to the A bomb site. So this upper area is, once you drop down, you can't get back up unless you do like a double boost or something insane. Maybe one boost would be enough, but it's still pretty steep. And obviously time consumes a lot of time. So time consuming, there you go, that's what I was thinking of. So you can choose to approach A from middle as either CTs or Ts by going up those stairs and coming out here. You can also choose to avoid that entirely and then go lower, which is probably easier because it doesn't funnel you through the same area that your rest of your team probably is, but opens you up to some some angles. And obviously if there's like an opper or a rifler who's upper mid, this opens up a whole new layer. And it's also worth noting, as an opper, you can see into the B bomb site or to the A bomb site entrance. I think in theory you're not actually in danger if you're like you could probably crouch out the whole way, but who the fuck is going to do that when they're trying to take the site? So generally speaking, somebody could hold this angle and have a pretty good line of fire onto the entrance. The problem is then obviously as an additional wrinkle, you have to worry about people coming through here, and you are probably the person who is best equipped to look into that area to see if they're going lower towards middle. But yeah, there's obviously like a huge number of pathways and lots of interesting gameplay options for both teams in that particular case. I really like the fact that middle is sort of stacked on top of itself, just because there's like so many different angles that you could take. I'm sure there's going to be a smoke for this particular spot that helps that. That doesn't require you to actually come over here. Like, I don't know what it would be. I saw a bunch of fucked skybox earlier anyway, but I'm pretty sure that's not going to hit it, but that's okay. It hit the tree. Wow, that's inadvertently a good smoke for something else, although it would still have to be a little bit to the right, and I don't know how I would be more precise with that. But I'm sure there could be something that you do where you do something like this, and eventually you'd find a lineup that would work. That didn't work either. But find a lineup for this, and you're probably good as the T side to run out here, take a gunfight from anybody who's sitting over here. Obviously, you can... there's a couple of different angles you can go over here, and this is probably mostly useful to get yourself over to that sniper's perch there. And I failed again. But also, I mean, sort of even the same way, like if you end up taking site control, like I said, on this particular... when you're on this site, you can obviously just boost your way up here and take fights like that and surprise people who are rotating downward. Take it from me, it sows a lot of confusion when you do that. That's one of my favorite moves, even though obviously I'm doing it against people who have no idea what the fuck this map is about. So that's that. But watermelon stand over here, that's pretty cool. And we're back to the CT entrance to upper mid, I guess. Obviously lower mid, you can just run down here. I think this is the quickest way to get to lower mid, just because otherwise you have to do like your CT, you got to run over here, jump over that, take a right, and then take another right. Like you're risking getting destroyed by somebody on the cross. So yeah, definitely an interesting wrinkle there. Though if you do decide to go to the lower middle area at first, and then you want to rotate outward just to get to here, this is probably like 1 or 2 seconds slower. So an A-rush might slip by you. And obviously if they do end up escaping, like they flash or something like that, it's super easy for them to evade your angle completely. So it's not OP, really. It's very powerful if they're actually threatening around the edge. Teams are just going to adapt to basically like they're going to stand back here and then they're going to take fights, and if they end up taking map control, then they can just like flash. You know, they can just have some guy over here And I want to see if that even flashes me. So let's see what happens. Yeah. So even though that's like a super quick to fade flash, that would still be enough to make me miss my shot. And then, you know, teams can pour out over here as soon as that flash hits. And that was really loose, right? So like you can just do something like this. And then that's probably pretty good, you know? So, and you won't see that at all either. Like if you're scoped in, right? Which you probably would be with an op or with a Krieg or an AUG or something like that. And obviously, if you're just holding it with a rifle, you're a real madman for one. For another, maybe you'll see it and turn away. But either way, you know, your focus has to be gone for a little bit. And then that will be more than enough for this team to get past you. And then, you know, suddenly you're really out of position and you've got to start jumping down and worrying that they've already taken this area so that like this approach becomes much less safe. And, you know, otherwise you could take a really long rotate back towards CT and come out over here and then have like one guy upper looking down, another guy over here trying to fight his way out here, hopefully with more cover and stuff. And, you know, then he gets out here and he dies probably. So really, I actually think this map is pretty well balanced right now. Obviously, I haven't done high-level playtesting, partially because I'm not a high-level player, partially because I don't know any high-level players. But it would be really nice, I think, to see some high-level players run out here and do their thing. Unfortunately, I don't think you can boost up here. It would be really psychotic if you could. So I always say unfortunately about stuff like that. It is probably better that it is not possible, but I always like to see insane stuff sometimes. There you go. But yeah, honestly, like this map is very dense, right? There's a lot going on in it. This is the I guess the CT approach, the normal CT approach, like I was talking about earlier. And I did talk about, said I was going to talk about post plants. So like I was saying earlier, you can plant the bomb right here, and especially if you plant it up here, I don't think there's a single way that they can stand to defuse it without being exposed to this angle. Now, on the contrary, if they just smoke your angle off, you might be fucked. Or especially if they smoke the bomb off. As I think Fallen had a great video on this at some point, or a clip or something where he talks about how they smoked. He was like Mirage standing CT ticket or something, not on ticket but around that area, and the bomb was planted for him, and they smoked him instead of the bomb, and so he just blindly fired until he got them all. And they were like, oh my god, he's an insane player. But in reality, it was just them not realizing that if they smoke the bomb, he can't do anything. So generally speaking, like it's a lot more up to chance when you smoke the bomb. But that being said, like this allows you to still have some say over what happens on the bomb site when you're super far away, just like what we were talking about, the corollary with B. And similar to the B bomb site, but albeit with less angles and less positions to play, it's more about like, in this particular area, it's more about map control that you take immediately following planting. So you have to like have somebody maybe in that hallway or have somebody even all the way up here holding for takes, you know, something like, you'd probably want to be over here and with a rifle instead of that. Hey. So yeah, instead of that, and then you're here, you know, you'd be doing something like this. And or maybe even like hiding completely, like being a real backstabbing piece of shit and, you know, annihilating people. But that would be like one position to play. There'd probably be another one that would be something like this, where you'd be peeking out or something like that. Obviously, you could get cleared really hard if somebody's over here. So maybe that position isn't as great as I'm making it sound. But for sure, you could do something like tons of off angles to hold that are fairly safe, especially in this area. Obviously, you could sit around here, could sit up there, and yeah, there's just tons of places to play from, honestly. Like, post plants in this particular area are more about map control surrounding the site than on the site itself. Whereas if we go all the way back over to B, this is a pretty big map, by the way, in case you didn't figure that one out. If you go all the way back to B, as you can see, there's places that are pretty much on the bomb site. Like, holy shit, you can plant all the way back here. Now, that's insane. But, yeah, there's places that are pretty much like either on or adjacent to the bomb site, whereas this is more about surroundings, like how much map control outside of the bomb site itself do you actually have. And that is all dependent on where you plant the bomb. So it looks like you can even plant it on the steps here. A little bit of elevation might help your cause. Oh, hello. Yeah, that's probably a clipping bug. But yeah, there's tons of places that you could, you know, deploy this and have a pretty favorable angle jumping up over here. You know, in fact, I think if you plant where I was just owing about, you could probably just shoot this guy over here a lot, and that would be it. So with that said, Bomb sites seem really dynamic. Approaches seem myriad enough and varied enough. I don't actually think, like I said, that there's too much of a side imbalance associated with them on paper. Question is, how many nades can you find once the skyboxes are opened up to be more proper, assuming that they are in proper right now. And I think that would be a positive change anyways. Little micro changes you could make to some of these rooms to make them a little bit more exciting whenever they do have a little bit of gameplay. I also think that some of the other pathways could probably use a little bit of change. Like alleyway seems super long, honestly, even though it's not really that long. It seems really long. Like this is probably the longest I would ever feel comfortable if I was making my own map to have a pathway that literally is just one end to another. Although, of course, we've seen actual maps in matchmaking like Train and stuff succeed with that. Ivy, the whole Ivy area on Train comes to mind for that sort of thing, you know, leading up to Dumpster from T-Spawn. But I wouldn't also necessarily model all my maps after Train either. So, yeah, I don't know. It's probably okay. It's just one of those things that I'm wondering if there's something else that could be done here to make this more interesting without it also being like too busy or too overpowered for one side. But that's probably low on the totem pole. I would say like skyboxes and tweaking those barren rooms right now would be higher. And then, you know, maybe you could look into obviously bomb site clipping and other bug fix stuff. Maybe updating the minimap to show that this is actually a pathable area and stuff like that. Mostly just so that players don't seem to be in the void when you spot them. I don't know if that's what... Yeah, that seems to be the same for that as well. But yeah, outside of a couple of advantages here and there, there's a nice little bench for me to sit on during no clip. And yeah, that's cool. Botcock, hope you guys had a good time. Bye.